Hi, my name is Hector, and this is my studio in Glendale, California. Right now I'm working on a couple different bodies of work getting ready for the fall. One of them is a solo booth in NADA in Miami this year, which I'm super stoked for. So just preparing for that and starting to kind of wrap my head around building out a body of work. I let the work kind of guide me to where the full body of work will eventually be. Usually I just have to work through it and then it'll just reveal itself. I'm using the airbrush, which you can see the whole setup. This is kind of my painting wall. And at the moment I have two different materials going on with the airbrush. This earlier style of work I developed like during 2020, during the pandemic. A lot of quiet time alone in the studio to kind of like experiment and manipulate materials. It's a layered process of building up layers of dye, put through the airbrush gun, and then at the very end, putting bleach in the airbrush gun, which kind of eradicates information in different areas. The darkest points have like the most layers to them. And then at the end, I can kind of go in and like carve out different sections. It just feels like painting with light, or it feels really sculptural. It's like a fire. So it's like once the material burns, you can't go back and make a log again. I developed this process and it was amazing, and I'm still discovering new things and kind of building it out. But I think ultimately I have a deep passion for color, and especially like really saturated colors or just maxed out colors. While developing that work, it just became such a big push to see how much color I can kind of get out of that process, which ended up spilling over into working back with acrylic.
So you were telling me how the airbrush process developed.
Yeah.
Can you tell me about how you came to airbrush in the first place?
Yeah,
and like
totally.
what else you were working on and why airbrush?
I bought an airbrush when I moved to California. My studio was in Brooklyn. I had always had this fascination with using a lot of different materials, maybe like unconventional materials within painting. So at that time in my practice, I was using like cement and enamel paint and a lot of spray paint. I had friends that were using airbrush and I saw like the techniques and kind of results that they were getting. You know, just having this tool that allows you to get the same effect, but then you just have like, you could just do anything. You can mix whatever combinations of colors, or, I maybe used acrylic for like the first couple paintings, and then I was like, oh, you could put dye through the airbrush because the viscosity is the same. So I just started really experimenting with it and just kind of doing some weird stuff.
I love portraits, figurative work. What drew you to people, and like why is it important to make work about people?
My earliest entry into art was figuration. It was copying images from books, portraits, or going to figure drawing classes. And so I think I held on to figuration all the way up until like junior year, and then it finally like broke. And then I switched to abstraction. And then when I was in New York, I was pretty much solely working with abstraction for, I guess that chunk of time was like a solid 10 years. It was moving, it was the pandemic, it was like just time alone in the studio. Again, just like listening to the work, little faces would just start popping up, either in drawings or in like collages or things like that. Going through the pandemic, isolation, our experience encountering other people in public, everyone was masked up. It just seemed like the face and the figure just became this really like rich kind of realm to get back into and explore. This is my painting setup. It's a little, when I paint fast, and it's just like pure exuberance and energy. So like I try to have everything pre-mixed or laid out. These bottles, like these little bottles, end up being my palette. So usually I'll have just like a row of them ready to go, mixed with like, purple, yellow, red, blue, green, just like the whole spectrum. And so when I'm painting, I can just kind of like be working and then like change bottles out really quickly. When I'm actually working on a piece, I tend to be all masked up, and I'm wearing a respirator. Maybe I'll paint for like 15 to like 45 minutes at a time, and then I'll take a break and let it dry and let everything kind of air out. But yeah, this is really the most ideal situation for airbrush, is just to have a giant open door, access to the outside, lots of airflow and everything. So if anyone's curious about airbrush, there's a whole health element to it as well that's really important.
What made you want to be an artist?
I think my love for art started at such an incredibly young age. Just having a lot of teachers and mentors that brought me into like a full-on artist community. So it wasn't just taking art classes in high school. It was like they like brought me into their world and like had me be a part of shows, and I was able to like organize shows with them. And so I think that really early experience gave me like a really good understanding of like what it meant to be an artist. It wasn't just making work, it was this whole like kind of like creative life.